The scales of justice. The atmosphere inside the courtroom was thick with the scent of old wood and the silent weight of expectations. Behind the elevated bench sat a woman whose presence commanded immediate respect. She looked down at the individuals gathered before her and spoke with a voice that was both firm and seasoned by experience. She asked if they could read the nameplate positioned in front of her. It read Judge Ebony K. Williams. She explained that in this particular courtroom, the only thing that mattered was how she viewed the facts presented to her. She described herself as being from North Carolina by way of Louisiana, carrying a blend of West Coast cool and a sharp New York edge. She looked at a woman standing before her and asked if there was a problem. The woman quickly replied that she had no problem, addressing the judge as Your Honor. The judge then reflected on the essence of equal justice, noting that it was rooted in the most important values of the country, specifically freedom and integrity. These were the goals she strove for in every case. Addressing the woman again, the judge noted that while the woman ran her own household, the man involved in the case was entitled to run his. The judge shared a bit of her own journey, explaining that she had decided to become an attorney to pursue the law because she wanted to be a voice for the voiceless. However, she clarified that the court could not hold someone accountable without proper cause. She emphasized that her courtroom was a place for people from all sectors of life, whether they were black, white, purple, gay, straight, or queer. That diversity was the heart of what equal justice with Judge Ebony K. Williams represented. The first case of the day involved Nicole Jennings and Asia Franklin. Nicole Jennings claimed that her friend had played her by asking for extra invites to her wedding, but then left her with 6 empty seats. On the other side, Asia Franklin argued that her group did not show up after she discovered that Ms. Jennings had insulted her on social media. The judge identified Nicole Jennings as the plaintiff and Asia Franklin as the defendant. She noted that Ms. Jennings was suing Ms. Franklin for the amount of $360. She asked the plaintiff to explain why they were in court that day. Ms. Jennings began her story, stating that they were there because her college best friend had begged for 4 additional seats, technically 5, for a very small and private wedding. Ms. Jennings had accommodated her by adding another table setting for 4 people, but then the friend had simply ghosted her and did not show up at all. The judge expressed surprise that a college best friend of many years would fail to show up on such an important day. She asked if the wedding had actually happened, and when Ms. Jennings confirmed it had, the judge offered her congratulations. Turning to Ms. Franklin, the judge expressed disbelief and asked if the allegations were true. Ms. Franklin admitted that they were true, but pointed to nasty social media posts that Ms. Jennings had written in a blog as the reason. She claimed a mutual friend had shown her the posts. Furthermore, she alleged that one of the bridesmaids had been very nasty and rude, treating her like the help. Ms. Franklin also expressed hurt because, despite their long history, she was not invited to be a bridesmaid, even though Ms. Jennings had been a bridesmaid in Ms. Franklin's own wedding. The judge noticed a ring on Ms. Franklin's finger and commented on how it was ringing, suggesting it was quite impressive. Ms. Franklin thanked her, and the judge joked that she could barely pay attention to the testimony because of the jewelry. She noted the philosophy of going big or going home, and Ms. Franklin agreed that they had gone all the way. The judge then asked to see the evidence of the social media posts. Ms. Jennings clarified that she did not make a public blog post. Instead, she had joined a private message group for brides to vent during the wedding planning process. She intended the post only for people within that specific group. The judge read the post aloud, which mentioned letting freedom ring for brides being guilt into adding people to the wedding party, and expressed being over it as the honeymoon countdown began. The judge remarked that it did not sound much like an invitation and asked Ms. Jennings how she really felt. Ms. Jennings explained she was frustrated after extending the catering for 4 extra people. The history between the 2 women was complicated. Ms. Jennings' husband and Ms. Franklin's former husband had been best friends in college. All 4 of them used to be very close. However, Ms. Franklin and her husband, Ralph, were now divorced. Ms. Franklin claimed the divorce happened because of cheating, though the judge noted that was not the court's business. Ms. Franklin alleged that Ms. Jennings had taken Ralph's side in the divorce, which destroyed their friendship. The judge paused to reflect on how friendships often become casualties of divorce. She observed that while houses and cars are negotiated, alliances are formed, and one truly finds out who their friends are during a divorce. She questioned why Ms. Franklin would expect to be a bridesmaid if the friendship had been destroyed. Ms. Franklin explained she wanted closure and felt hurt that Ms. Jennings had not reached out to check on her during the divorce. The judge countered that while that was unfortunate, one cannot keep centering themselves during someone else's wedding. Ms. Franklin reminded the court that 10 years ago, she had a huge wedding where Ms. Jennings served as her maid of honor. She had done everything for her friend without complaint. The judge dryly asked if she wanted a cookie for doing what a friend is supposed to do. Ms. Jennings added that when Ms. Franklin expressed hurt over not being in the wedding party, she had offered her a role as an usher to help coach people. The judge laughed, calling the offer of being an usher pure shade. The judge observed that both women clearly still cared for each other despite the tension. She noted that while this was not a therapy session, she hoped they would work on restoring their friendship. However, her task was to decide the fiscal nature of the claim. Ms. Jennings had given Ms. Franklin a +1, and Ms. Franklin had RSVP'd that she and her new partner would attend. The judge then focused on the fact that Ms. Franklin asked for 4 additional guests on the very day of the wedding. Ms. Franklin explained that her parents, sister, and brother-in-law were pressing her to attend because they had known Nicole since college. The judge told Ms. Franklin that she looked crazy for making such a request on the day of the event. She suggested that the request was not about the family, but rather a way for Ms. Franklin to see how far Ms. Jennings would go to accommodate her after not being prioritized in the wedding party. The judge also told Ms. Jennings that she was wrong for trying to accommodate such an unreasonable request just to ease her conscience. Ultimately, the judge ruled that Ms. Franklin's request for 6 seats was not genuine. She believed it was a maneuver to hurt Ms. Jennings the way Ms. Franklin had been hurt. The court ruled in favor of the plaintiff for the full amount of $360. As they left, Ms. Jennings made a final comment about freedom ringing and lunch money. The second case involved Ricky Edwards and Amber Gilbert. Mr. Edwards was suing Ms. Gilbert for $1,500. He claimed that after dating for 3 years, Ms. Gilbert had become aggressive about moving the relationship forward toward marriage, which he was not ready for. He mentioned that she was 5 years older and more established. On the night in question, after a few drinks, he claimed an argument escalated and she shoved him toward the door of her house. He alleged that as he was shoved out, he tripped and fell, breaking his glasses and his phone. Ms. Gilbert denied ever touching him. She explained that she had simply asked him to move in with her, not even to get married yet. She felt he was making excuses, despite being 30 years old. She claimed she gestured for him to leave, and then slammed the door. She did not know if the door made contact with him, but later saw ring camera footage of him falling. The judge reviewed the footage. It showed Mr. Edwards stumbling and his glasses flying, but there was no evidence of physical contact from Ms. Gilbert or the door. Mr. Edwards had submitted invoices for $800 for the glasses and $700 for the phone. However, since the video showed he tripped on his own, the judge ruled to dismiss the claim entirely. Ms. Gilbert expressed satisfaction with the ruling, while Mr. Edwards concluded that it was best for them to go their separate ways.